Hey guys, good evening. Just coming to you with an update on the market action for today, earning picks for tomorrow, as well as just a review of the prior earnings um, uh, earnings picks we made last week. So it is today is Tuesday, June 18th, and the market, as you can see, is up quite a bit today. It started the day off with a huge spike to the upside. This is the S&P cash market here. But you can see it had a gap up in the overnight over the weekend from around 2890-ish to 2905, and then started the morning. Just the first 5 minutes were kind of indecisive, and then there was a tweet from President Trump about a phone call or a meeting rather with the Chinese prime minister, as well as um, the team discussing tariffs. The Chinese team discussing tariffs with the president and his team. So that caused the market, as you can see, to just spike all the way up. I think the Dow Jones was up about 400 and some points at one point today. You can see just from the S&P, it's up about 1%, but it's off its highs of 29.30. So that's a good 25. From 29.05 in the open to 29.30 is 25 points. So it was up. It was up a good 35 points from Sunday. I'm sorry, from Friday. So the market is still continuing to march higher. Tomorrow we have a really big day with the Federal Reserve coming out with its FOMC minutes, and we will know one way or another if there is going to be a rate cut tomorrow. I think the market looks like it has it pretty priced in at this point, so we'll see what happens if there is no rate cut. Um, you can see here we're almost at the all-time highs, just about a percent away from the all-time highs in the S&P 500 at least. So, it's tomorrow's going to be a pretty crucial day to see, whether we stop here at this 2954 area or whether we break through it and continue higher. I think it'll be a pretty decisive day tomorrow. If there's no cut, we'll see. I don't know. The market can move on a dime. It's pretty news driven, as you can see. So we're just gonna sit on our hands until the decision is made, except for potential earning trades, which we would trade just first thing in the morning. In the first couple of hours of trading. Minutes for the FOMC are due out around 2 Eastern, so still, you have most of the day to do any kind of earnings related trading or position, altering of any positions that you currently have. So let's start with the trade that we talked about last week. So we had Broadcom, I believe it was Avago, AVGO, that we spoke about. This is a weekly chart. Let's move to daily. We spoke about Broadcom on the 14th. So you can see that it had earnings the prior evening. It opened up, gap down, and what we had talked about is doing a retracement back to the 50% Fibonacci level uh, if it would make it that far. So I think I took the fib off of here, but let me go ahead and put it back on so you can see what we're talking about here. That's from the overnight move. Okay, so I got into the trade. It wasn't the best trade in general because, as you can see, I got in above the first 5 minute high, which is right here where this arrow is where I actually got in. And you can see it just really, it started, went up quickly and then just came right back down and consolidated for most of the day actually until the very end of the day. So I did manage to hold on to this trade because it never did go below that where I bought it, that bar, right? So the 200-day moving average is this dashed line here. It never got below that, and that was our trigger point. And the reason I didn't buy it earlier in the morning is because I'm waiting for it. I was waiting for it to get above the 200-day moving average. So it did as soon as it peaked up above that 200-day moving average right here, is when the trade was a go for me. And I wait for confirmation. So I didn't trade it immediately. I waited for it to confirm above the first 5-minute high. It was a little dicey there all day. I didn't know, what was going to happen, but it never did go down below this first low. It made higher lows throughout the day, based very well in a kind of bull flag pattern. And then at the end of the day, it started popping up. So I actually got out of this trade pretty early. I didn't take the whole. I didn't get this entire move. But as you can see, it almost tapped that 50% and started coming right back down. I got out here just above, just as that second bar was being formed right here because it looked like it was going to be a double top. I just didn't want to take a chance. It's so late in the day. I don't like really trading that late in the day anyway. As you can see, since then, the next day it had a little bit of a choppy action. It was just consolidating here, went right back to the 200-day moving average, spiked right back up. So some good trading opportunities here as well. And today, today it is, with the news on China, all the semiconductor stocks have just blown up. So this is sometimes the benefit of holding holding your positions if they you know are doing what you expect them to do. Because it was a weekend, I didn't hold it, and I actually didn't look at it yesterday. I didn't look at the stock yesterday at all. Today's move is very much news driven, very much about tariffs. All the semiconductor stocks actually popped pretty hard today. But what we talked about actually on Broadcom is that it had the potential of filling this gap even if it was strong. So the day of earnings, it wasn't that strong, but it did make a good comeback. And the next day, it just kind of consolidated in a little doji. It got over the 20 moving average today, and I guess that could have been a trade over the prior day's high, which was the 50% Fibonacci also of that overnight move on earnings. And then it just, it went and actually did fill the gap perfectly. Went quite a bit above it, and then has actually just settled back down right there at the gap fill. So would have been a good opportunity, like for a swing trade versus just a day trade. And I just didn't like the action on it that first day with it being so slow right after the earnings. Especially with such a huge down move. But it did make a lot of the move that we had talked about. It made a lot of that move in the pre-market. So, we talked about it going down to this level here, 253.33, that pivot, and where this, ascending trend line was as well. Because it made that move in the pre-market, it went all the way down, tapped it almost exactly, and then started its move back up. I guess it had already made a big part of the move, and recovery that it was going to make, and so it just pretty much consolidated most of the day. But it was a pretty good trade. I mean, not too stressful or anything. It pretty much just flagged all day, but it would have been a really great swing trade. Granted, we can't predict the news or know what President Trump is going to tweet, so it does move the market, though. So it's something to be aware of. Okay, so what we also, I also wanted to go over with you guys a couple of other trades that I'm in and that I've been thinking about, as well as for tomorrow for earnings. So let's do the earnings trade first. So we have Adobe, which I think is on its conference call right now, so it'll be interesting to see what it's doing. So Adobe reported earnings today after the bell. You can see it is up a good $10 from the closing price of 276.78. And the conference call is ongoing right now, so it's looking pretty good for holding up this move. It's holding up this $10 move. I will say, looking at Adobe's chart, let's just put it on a weekly so you can see a little bit better. But this is Adobe's chart on the weekly. it was at an all-time high, and it looked like I've connected, the last two highs, the higher high from September till April, and it's just just an ascending trend line there to give an idea of a potential resistance point. Additionally, you can see that this 291.71, which is the all-time high, is also marked off by a price level. So on the daily chart, you have the all-time high as a potential resistance, probably a big resistance there. And then you also have this 285 level, which is the prior, like this pivot here as well. So you've got these two tops. 285 could be a potential resistance. Right now, it's acting as a little bit of a consolidation area, but it did spike all the way to 287. So the potential tomorrow could be, if it holds in this area, for it to fill this. It's not really a gap, but this area. It has this window here between the 285.32, or the high of the overnight, which is 287, and 291.71, which is that all-time high. So if it gets past, this area here and continues higher off the open tomorrow, I would expect that it would probably fill up to 290-ish. I probably, if I got in it on the long side, I'd probably put my target just underneath 290, just because there's some spiky action here, and it's the all-time high, so you could expect probably some resistance there. So that's what I'd be looking for in Adobe if it has a positive move in the morning. More interesting to me would be on the short side. I mean, if it starts getting weak, because it did have weak guidance actually. So I'm really surprised to see this positive move when its guidance was so weak going into the next quarter, into the third quarter. So you can see here again, same levels apply. This is a just a descending trend line off the prior two highs on the daily chart. You've got this all-time high, and then there's some lower highs here, this one and this one. So I've just mapped it out to the most recent high. And you have the potential, if it gets below this trend line, for it to fill this gap down to this 280.57 level. Um, yeah, yep. So it has a gap that it could fill between 284 and 280.57. So that's one potential uh, for earnings, the post earnings move, depending on if it's strong or weak. So you've got the upside move. You have a window here. If it stays around where it is and opens tomorrow and starts showing weakness, you could also trade it to the downside to fill this gap here to this 280.57 area. Additional targets, if it continues to be weak, you have, of course, the 200-day moving average down here that's in a dash line, as well as this prior low at 257.46. You could also utilize this pivot here, which is a prior kind of spike low of 272. Looks like 272 is a pretty defined pivot there as well, that area. So, I mean, it does also have this 20 moving average. I'm not too concerned about that. I don't expect that to be too much of an area of support for it. But, you got two options. It looks strong at the moment, but with the weak guidance, anything can happen. So tomorrow you could have somebody downgrade Adobe, you could have somebody upgrade Adobe. You just really have to wait till the open to see how the action is and go from there. So Adobe's a good one to look at tomorrow for a post-earnings trade. Also, Jabil Circuit, another stock hit which had earnings today after the bell. It's pretty. It hasn't had much of a move even after its earnings call. So, and it's kind of a choppy chart as well. So you'd just be looking in this case. It's quite choppy over the course of the past several months. But there are some areas that you can look at for potential resistance. And I have this complex trend line drawn here from previously. I already had it drawn. And it looks like it's acting as some level of resistance. I mean, it did spike all the way up to 29, so that would be an area to watch, as well. And 29 also has a little bit of a um, it could potentially be an area of resistance because it's such a spike high. There's really no activity in this area, but this complex trend line is acting as a level of resistance, and it also falls at the level of the 20 moving average. So, with this stock, you could see some weakness off the open to fill this gap. It's not that much of a move, so I don't really like this trade as much to the downside. I will say if it starts showing some strength, I would need to see it get above this area of consolidation and would only trade it up to that 29 or just even below that 29 unless it showed some real strength. But this doesn't, I mean, to be honest, this isn't showing much promise for me. I really like Adobe a lot better. Just wanted to bring this out there for your knowledge. And those are the two earnings plays. I'll put a separate video out with the other stocks that I currently have as holdings since this video is getting pretty long. So you guys have a great night and happy trading.